Well, hello there. My name is HW, and thank you so much for listening to episode 39 of the Tone Junkie podcast. Episode 39. Thank you, everybody who joined us last week. We spoke with Michael Britt, and of course, thank you for everyone watching on the video edition of the podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook or maybe a clip on Instagram or something. Appreciate the love. Appreciate you guys listening, and thank you for all the loyal podcast fans. I got some messages, some people who were literally like, I love the podcast. I'm starting from the beginning. And it's not too many episodes to catch up on at this point. The podcast up until now has been mostly me rambling into my telephone through an app called Anchor. And the podcast now is me rambling into this microphone and occasionally having some really cool guests on. I've gotten a lot of questions. This is going to be an Ask HW episode of the podcast where I'm just going to answer some questions that people submitted through Instagram, through Facebook, kind of about Tone Junkie universe stuff and just new gear. And there's a good amount of NAMM questions. I'm going to touch on some of the Kemper stuff a little bit, but I'm saving my complete thoughts on the Kemper NAMM showings for when Michael Britt's back on here. He's coming to the house again, and it looks like Michael Britt's going to be a big part of the podcast moving forward, which I'm hugely excited about. I offered the invitation. I said, Mike, anytime, man, anytime. We had such a good time talking last time. It's just fun to talk shop, and it's fun. I mean, me and him get together. We do lunch, and that conversation that was recorded on the Tone Junkie podcast, episode 38, the last podcast, was literally the first time we had spoken and not been eating hot chicken. At least one of us. Once since I went keto, I haven't been eating hot chicken. I've been getting like a chop steak there, which is good. And I had the steak too, and they have beef bits at this place. Anyway, it's a good old country place, and they got great food. But maybe next time I'm thinking we'll get hot chicken in here, and we'll just eat it while we record the podcast. That could work, right? Not just coffee, not just delicious Stoke cold brew, which the guys at Worship Tutorials turned me on to. It's very good. Not just that, but maybe we'll get some hot chicken on here. But Michael Britt's coming back. He was at the Kemper booth. He talked with Christoph. He talked with Thomas. He talked with Burkhardt. He talked with everybody. So let's get him in here, and he'll give his thoughts on what he saw, what he heard. I'll give my thoughts. I've done a couple videos on what was happening at NAMM, and I'm about to do a video on everything we know about the Kemper cone and Kemper cab. And I've got some material from Kemper that they gave me with some deets in it, some details, and I'm really looking forward to that. But episode 38 is an Ask HW episode. Let me jump on over to Instagram and let's answer these questions because I love that you guys submitted questions and stuff. And it's all sorts of stuff. But let me just say this first before I get into this, because I had an experience with a piece of gear that I don't think I really want to do like video content on. And so I'm just going to talk about a little bit here on the podcast. Just imagine someone has asked me the first question of, hey, HW, what do you think of the new Fender Acoustasonics? I actually bought one. The first day of NAMM, I wandered into a guitar center in Nashville, and they had the new Marshall amps, which hadn't even been announced yet. Bought it, played it. It was great. It was a cool amp. Wasn't going to get it, then decided to get it. And then same thing with the Acoustasonic. I bought the Acoustasonic guitar. Here's my opinion of the guitar. It is so well built. I can't believe what a great job they did building this thing. It's the arm cut, the top, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful instrument. I mean, it's completely ugly, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful in its craftsmanship. And when you play it, you're like, wow, this is kind of like an electric became an acoustic. Now, here's why I'm not keeping it. Here's why I'm kind of so on it. It honestly sounded great in the store. And when I was in the store, I wasn't going to get one, but I walked into Guitar Center, and I was actually looking for an amp to hurry up and profile and kind of get in the fast lane of profiling an amp, because my Marshall Jubilee had blown up, which is the amp that I really wanted to release. But so I went and found a low power Tweed Twin clone from Victoria, and that was that low power Tweed Twin pack. But they had they had all these guitars in front, and the ones right in the middle were these new Acoustasonics. I was in there for maybe an hour and a half, and they had 5 out there. And as I was trying to leave, they had only 3 left. So they had sold 2. And I commented to my friend there. I said, hey, John, what's going on with these? He said, we just sold 2. We only put them out this morning. It's been about 2 hours, and there's a guy coming in to buy one later. So basically we're down to 2, but I have them out there in case people want to try them out. And I go, whoa, well, these are going to sell out. And, Guitar Center's return policy is quite generous. I mean, you can just return something on day 29, on day 30 even. And so I figured, why not? Why not pick it up? And maybe I'll find a thing to do with it. Now, as I'm buying it, as I'm sitting there playing with it, I'm thinking, what am I going to use this for? I don't have any reason to use this thing. I mean, I really don't have why would I own this? It doesn't make any sense. Who would use this? I heard some people making comments, a worship leader will use it in a church. Maybe. Why wouldn't they just play a normal acoustic guitar? Like, what's the advantage over a normal acoustic guitar? That I'm not really sure about. I don't think there is an advantage, at least for that application. Well, what if it's an electric player and they want to, they just want to have an acoustic that feels like an electric? That could work, but how many people are doing that? You know what I mean? How many people are like, it's so well built, it plays so well, and it really does feel like an electric guitar, kind of with some lighter acoustic strings, plugged it in, and this is where, for me, it doesn't quite make sense. This is where, for me, it's like the same thing with the Taylor stuff, because the gentleman who made this at Fender had previously made the T5 at Taylor, and I believe he had a pretty big hand in making a guitar that I own, which is those Taylor custom electrics, solid body electrics. It looks really good on paper, and it's somehow well put together, but when you play it, it's largely uninspiring. And that's my opinion of all that Taylor stuff, all the Taylor electric stuff. And that's as someone who I mistakenly sold a Les Paul and bought that. Actually, it was bought for me, and I sold a Les Paul after because I thought this is taking the place of Les Paul. And it sounds good. It sounds great. I still have that electric guitar in the closet. I haven't played it in years. I just leave it in the closet. My wife bought it for me when we were young, and when that was a lot of money that guitar cost. And so I cherish it for that reason. But it just seems to me that those guitars are well executed and not well executed. You know what it's like? It's like when I rented a car. I used to rent cars when I would travel a bit for work, and I would always, I several times got a Chevy Impala. And I remember thinking there's absolutely nothing wrong with this car, and yet nothing is good about it. Like, that is really the story to me of and the Impala isn't even made anymore, probably for that reason. I remember, but several times I got in Chevy Impalas. I don't know why I kept getting them. But there was nothing good about it. There was nothing grand about it. Just nothing. Nothing at all. It was really just a lackluster car. Nothing wrong. I can't say anything was so terribly terrible. But it was just like the plainest Jane you ever saw at the school dance. Is it better to dance with her or to just stand against the wall? I'm still trying to figure that out. To have loved and lost, or to have never rented a Chevrolet Impala at all. I don't know. That's how I would describe it, though. That is how I would describe it. So basically what I'm saying is don't buy it. Just don't buy it. It's not great. And there's nothing wrong with it. HW, have you ever had the Kemper freeze while playing live? Have I ever had the Kemper freeze while playing live? No, I haven't. I've been very fortunate. I also don't upgrade my Kemper that I use live a lot. So I just use a white face Kemper because it has a higher, it has a little boost in the mid-range. A lot of people don't know that, but the white Kempers have more mids. For those of you not watching the video edition, I'm shaking my head no. It's not true. There's no difference. But I haven't had a freeze. I did once for the first time recently have my remote completely shut off while I was playing at home. But again, that was on a beta release and that was on a newer thing. I let my white Kemper get pretty old in terms of the OS upgrades because it's working and I have no reason to change it. And I upgraded my other one a lot. My powered Kemper that I don't really play out live much, I could, but I just don't play it out live. And so I really have one Kemper for me to go play out live with, and then another Kemper that I mostly do the videos with, although I do videos with the white one all the time as well. I don't know why I have two Kempers. It just sounded like a good idea. I had one, and then I wanted to buy a powered one, and then I bought the second one, and then I kind of like being able to have one on my desk and one already packed up, so I just grab it and go, and I don't have to mess with my desk setup. I can still have one set up on my desk, so when I come back, it's not all taken apart and stuff. So that's been useful. Plus, it's been good to let people borrow Kempers when they've been asking. You know, I'm thinking about getting one, and I can offer them a Kemper. So that's that right there. I've never had it freeze up live, but a lot of people have been having problems, and I don't know exactly why or what's the, you know, there might be some glitchy releases, but I'd say if you're not on one that you're not having problems with and you've already upgraded, I'd say go to the most current official release. If it's still happening there, I don't know. Talk to Kemper about that. Funny thing, HW, have you ever had trouble with your Kemper Chord? Okay, I'm going to make an assumption on what that means. If by Kemper Chord you mean the power cord, no. But I have had trouble with the... I just recently had some trouble with the remote cable. My remote cable broke. Now, I have two remote cables, and I have one for home, one for live. The live one broke. It broke exactly where you'd think it would break. It's the portion that plugs, the little tab that plugs into the back of the Kemper, not the portion with the XLR housing on the outside that plugs into the remote. It's the XLR Kemper, or not that one. It's the one on the back. And the trouble there is that's not an audio connection. It's not made for the rigors of the road or even moving around or even for a slight breeze. So I'm really excited that we're going to be able to, I'm going to be able to get that mod done at British Audio. And I'm going to do a video on it. If you guys aren't aware, there's a mod that British Audio here in Nashville has. And I like those guys over there. It's a mod that they do that basically, because they're a Kemper, a licensed repair center or an official repair center, whatever that verbiage is, they can make modifications like this to your Kemper and doesn't void the warranty. So you can actually send them your Kemper. They will disconnect that plug in the back, and they'll give you a different plug in the top corner of the Kemper. It's safe. It doesn't overheat. It's great. It works. And what it does is it gives you that same connector that you have on your floor remote, the one that has the XLR housing on the outside that locks in. It gives you that same connection on both sides. So what you end up getting is a more sturdy, like audio grade connection, I'd say. Not in terms of the quality, but just in terms of you can't yank it out. You know, it has that XLR housing around it. So I'm going to get that done to now my white Kemper, and then I'm going to have them do it on the black Kemper. And that way I can play both of them out whenever I want. Now, the black Kemper's not broken right now, and I need a Kemper at home. So I'm going to do that video sooner than later. And that'll be good. That'll be really good. Did I forget at the top of the podcast? Did I forget? I think I did. Today's podcast and all the podcasts for a while are sponsored by the Tone Junkie Loaded Kemper, available exclusively at British Audio. Check that out. They've got the Tone Junkie Loaded Kemper, and they've also got some other loaded Kempers. They've got a Michael Britt loaded Kemper, and that's a killer Kemper too. So get what you're looking for. It's the best deal in the Kemperverse. That's what I'm telling people. If you're looking for a new Kemper, or you know someone who is, tell them to go check out the Tone Junkie Loaded Kemper over there at British Audio. They will, they'll hook it up. They'll preload some stuff on there for you. Okay, enough of the commercial. HW, what are the best Gretsch pickups for all around besides original? TV Jones? What are the best Gretsch pickups for all-around stuff besides original pickups? I'm a fan of the original Gretsch pickups, but I would have to say probably TV Jones. I'm not totally aware of what else is out there. I know there's some McNelly, I think, makes some. The Lollertrons are not appropriate for that use. They're full-size humbucker routes. So the Lollertrons are really meant to be a drop-in replacement for full-size humbuckers, which is also very cool. I'm planning on getting another JM Pro and putting Lollertrons in there. Yeah, I'd say probably TV Jones. I've heard that Lambertones, Curtis Lamberton at Lambertone Pickups, who has some great pickups that people are raving about called the Cremas. Guy's a big coffee drinker. He's got some pickups out there that he's working on right now, but they're not released yet. And I don't think he put them out at NAMM. So I'm going to have to go TV Jones because that's about all that's out there, you know? I've seen the McNally, I forget the name of it exactly. Other than that, it's TV Jones. I mean, the guy's really got the market cornered on that stuff. I'm unaware of another Filtertron style pickup. There are the Fender Fidelatrons, but I don't even think you could buy those by themselves, and I don't know that they're better than the Gretsch pickups. Advice for achieving more headroom when running drives into the front of the Kemper. Okay, well, Ben, there's a new trick, actually. I haven't really talked about it on the podcast, but it's been suggested to me, and I have tried it out. It does work. Troy at Guitar for His Glory is using it. A bunch of people using it. Don't run it into the front. Okay, so here's what you got to do. Okay, this is going to be a roundabout kind of explanation here, but don't run your Kemper into the front. A long time ago, someone asked me, how could you bypass the input stage on the Kemper? And I had the idea, well, what if you didn't use the input stage? What if you put a loop in the first block and you came into the back, into the return of what would be the Kemper loop, the send and return? Come in there, will it work? It will work. It does work. What I didn't know is the real trick, and that's what people figured out next. I forget who told me about this. I think it was Bill Boyce. Somebody told me about this. Bill Boyce on the forums, on the Facebook groups. But Bill basically told me that someone had pointed this out to him, and forgive me because I don't know who to give credit to originally. If you take that loop, so put a loop in slot A of your Kemper. Now, boost up that loop. There's a volume on the loop. Boost it. That will give you more headroom. Why? Why would that give you more headroom? Well, here's what's happening. That boost on your loop there, it's adding decibels on the send jack. So if you boost 3 or 4 decibels, it's adding 3 or 4 decibels to the signal. It's boosting the signal. Then it goes out to your effects, then it comes back. So what does the effects loop have to do now to return to unity? It has to buffer the return. So if you boost it 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 decibels, however high it'll go, I think it goes to 8. Then on the way back, it's putting in a pad on the return of the loop. So if you don't plug into the front of the Kemper, it's boosting a signal that's not there, but it's still applying the pad on the return. So you can pad the input of your Kemper, and people are saying that this really helps for when you want to slam the front of your Kemper with pedals. Now, you're technically not slamming the input stage because you're instead slamming the return of that loop that you put in slot A. It costs you 1 slot in the stomps because it's stomp A, and that's all it costs you. And I'm not sure if the tuner works at that point. I'd have to go check. But if you want advice for achieving more headroom, run the drives in the front of the Kemper, but don't plug it into the front. Plug it in the return of a loop you put in stomp A and boost the level, and that will put automatically a pad on the return, which you are using for an input at that point. Another trick is, let's say for a second that you are like me and you go, I totally love this Tone Junkie Ace 30 J2 profile. That's one of my favorites. Then I would say this. Try that. Also try J4 or J5 in that same profile pack, Ace 30 J4 or J5, and reduce the gain down to where J2 is, or reduce it down to wherever you like it, clean or whatever. See if that doesn't give you more headroom than you had with J2. I think it will. And I think you'll notice that it's still a very lively sound, still a very up sound, maybe not the most authentic tone, but I think authenticity is largely overrated when it comes to the tone we're seeking on the Kemper. Who cares if it sounds exactly like a twin? I've heard a lot of twins sound bad. Every time you record a twin, you need to put some EQ on it, especially when you're going to go master it, right? You've never heard a guitar amp, a classic guitar amp on a recording that wasn't mastered. You've never heard one that wasn't EQ'd in some way. Even if it was just bounced to tape, even if it was just the EQ from microphones, you never heard that amp by itself. It's part of the chain. So I worry less about authenticity. I want a tone that approximates it. I want a Voxy tone to sound like a Vox. I want it to sound like the best Vox I ever heard, yes. But I'm less worried about, strictly, does this sound exactly like, a 67 twin? Well, sounds exactly like a 67 twin that I mic'd up, and maybe I cut a little low end because it was a bit bellowy. That's perfectly good. I mean, that's perfectly acceptable. And I mean, you can achieve that cut with an EQ, with mics, with adjustments to the Kemper, with a cab shift. You could adjust the EQ on the front. I think it's still authentic tone, if that makes sense. When was your no going? Eric Fint. Well, I'm going to say the names on these. That was Ben King too, by the way, who asked that question. Thanks, Ben. Eric Fint wants to know from Instagram, when was your no going back moment with your Kemper? When was your no going back moment? Well, I've told this story many times on the podcast, so I'll make this a short one, and then I'll try to expand a little bit on my no going back moment. I do remember first hearing a Kemper live, playing with another dude. I walked in with my Cerebella, my Sur guitar, my trifecta on my board with a King of Tone overdrive. I had $5,000 worth of equipment probably I was carrying in, like most boutique Sunday morning guys, You got a $2,000 guitar, a $2,000 amp, you got $1,000 on your pedal board easily. Maybe I had more than that, actually, now that I think about it. But I basically heard him start playing through his Strymons and the Kemper, and it sounded like a record. I thought the stems had started. I thought the track was on. And it wasn't. And I went, oh man. And then I played my guitar, and I sounded like an SM57. And there's something to be said, there's really something to be said about going, well, the SM57 is great in a mix, but at the end of the day, I am dragging in $5,000, $6,000 worth of equipment because I've got a $2,000 handmade American guitar. I've got a $2,000 point-to-point hand-wired amp. I've got three $400 top-of-the-line digital units for processing my signal in the Strifecta. I've got a $400 King of Tone. I've got like a $250 Cali 76. This is all the stuff I was playing at the time. This was my rig. I've got like a $159 Tube Screamer pedal. Or I don't know. No. It was a Tube Screamer Mini, I think, at the time. I've got like a $129 clone of a Klon. And I'm putting all that through an $80 microphone. They're not popular because they're the best mic in the world, the SM57. It's popular because it's a solid workhorse amp. I mean, it's a solid workhorse mic, excuse me. It's a solid workhorse mic. It does a thing really well. But how many like famous recordings or like how many top producers today are like, throw away all your microphones, you just need an SM57? No. And we use them live because live we usually go, well, this room isn't treated or this room isn't great for this or that. And it's live. It's not, no one's recording it. It's not, so it's good enough and it's easy. And it makes the guitars actually sit really pretty nicely in a mix, in a live mix, because they're punchy and don't have a lot of low end and stuff. That's not always what you want in a recording. So that was a no going back moment for me. That was when I really took notice and I said, wow, that Kemper sounds tremendous. Now the guys were using Strymon stuff, but I later discovered that the Kemper delays and verbs were amazing, and now with the new verbs, they're even better. I'd say though, for me, a real no going back moment, like was a recent one I just had, was on top of that, I just did a record with this group called Church House, which at the time I'm recording this is out in 2 days on digital. It's out now if you can get a physical copy. So there's some here in Nashville area, but it's out for everybody on February 1. I'll push it on the channel a little bit, but I'm not under any impressions that everyone wants to hear my music. I'm just a guitar player who played on a project, whatever. But I am proud of that record. But at the end of the day, I had been dialing in my tone for about the past year, playing live Sunday mornings with the guys in Church House, and I've been playing with them, and I had kind of just started dialing it in live and then not touching it, and then going back to that performance because I kept undoing what I would do live when I got back home. And so eventually I just stopped touching it at home, and I stumbled upon tones I was really happy with. I upped the delay higher than I normally up the delay. I did this, I did that. And I came up with this 4-tiered system of my main sound, which I'm using these 4 tones 90% of the time. And the 4 tones work like this. You can see it if you watch the video about the HW's Performance Pack. I call it, deluxe, main deluxe. It's basically just a king of tone in front of an AC30, and I've got some delay and verb on it in a worship sort of style, pretty heavy style. And then from there, I add some more delay. I morph up to add more delay. That's step 1. Step 2. Then from there, I have that same sound, but I've upped the verb, so I've washed it out a bit. And then I morph that up, and I've increased the delay and washed it out even more. So I basically have that sound with like a little drier, something I could play some rhythm with. I couldn't be like super dry with the rhythm. It'd have to be like a rhythm that I could have some delay on and stuff. And then I go up, but I can always switch the delay off. Then I have a little more delay, then a little wet, a little washed out, a little more washed out. And to me, that gives me everything I need in terms of, sometimes I want the guitar drier. A guitar that's drier in the mix, the same tone, dry and wet, can be very punchy and then very sort of big and thick and back a little bit. Because you got to remember, reverb is just 3-dimensional panning, isn't it? We have right and left, and then we've got reverb. And I really think of the reverb as being front and back. My buddy Nick turned me on to that. And it was during recording with him. He's the other guitar player, and he's a producer here in town. We were really lucky on this record. The guy who produced it, his name is Michael Farron, and he's a really popular songwriter here in Nashville. He's also a Dove Award-winning producer and a Grammy-nominated songwriter. Anyway, I should get him on here. He produced the record, but the way we recorded it was almost like they were co-producers because he did the final mixing and production and everything. And then one of the guys singing on the record, Chris, he did a lot of the vocal over it. He's a producer too. He did a lot of the vocal stuff and sort of did the recording of them and then turned them in. My buddy Nick and me got together, and Nick is a producer, and bands travel to Nashville to record with Nick. And so this project was kind of a big collaboration. I mean, it was just people just doing little, all part of it. But sitting down with my buddy Nick Baumhart, I walked in with all my live Kemper settings to do all the overdubs for this live recording. And for this live recording, we said, trash it. Just trash all the guitar tracks and let's redo them all. So that's what we did. So it was what we played live, but we redid them. We might have kept some. I'm really not sure. I wasn't on the back half of this, but I was there for the live recording. I played on that, and then the recording of the overdubs. And what we basically did was I pulled up my live sound, said, how does this sound? He said, great, like perfect. And we tried to make some changes, and the changes we made, we didn't think made it better. And that was for me a real moment where I realized the sounds I've been playing live are the sounds I'd want to record with. And that's what I did. And the Kemper allows me to do that. There's no recreating that sound that I did in the studio or recreating it outside the studio. There's no, how do I, what should I take on the road, or what do I like live or not live? Now, I just dialed in my stuff to work live, and then it worked in the studio. Now, on this project, I took a very lead guitar role, and I did notice that Nick was doing some of the heavy lifting in terms of he was changing up his tone to add texture because he's a producer and he does that. So is it always 100% I could dial in on my tone and it's perfect and I never need to change it? No, I don't think that's true. I think there is tones that work live and work as layers on a record that maybe aren't your preferred live tone, but I like having a tone that works for me live and taking that into the studio and hearing it, and it's working and it's sitting well in the mix. And that's the important thing to me. So for me, that was a real never going back moment. That's a real I'm not going to gain anything by going back to tube amps. And the other thing was early on, we were doing some videos with the Kemper on the YouTube channel, and the Suze said to me, maybe you should mic up a real amp for this. And I went, why? And he's like, I don't know. It'll sound great. Get get a Royer out or get a Fathead out and get the 50s, and let's put a couple mics on it and let's really hear this amp, let this pedal through a real amp in the room. And I did it. And I sent him the video, and he said to me, he's like, yeah, it didn't sound better. I was like, I know it didn't. It didn't. It sounds the same as when we profile the amp and then put it through the Kemper, except I don't have to mic it up and deal with the volume. It's so much better. So, yeah, that was a real those were my 3 no going back moments. It was my moment of discovery, which is hearing someone play the Kemper and realizing it sounds like the record. It was like a moment of real confirmation when the Suze told me it sounds the same. This really does sound the same as when we mic up the amp or when we use the Kemper in videos. It sounds the same. And then I'd say my moment of triumph, because I don't think with a tube rig you can realistically achieve tone live and be consistent enough to be on a record. Because you got to understand this. The Kemper doesn't replace a tube amp. It replaces an entire signal chain that you use to record or play live. It also replaces the microphone. It also replaces the preamp if you use a preamp. It also replaces effects. It replaces everything between the guitar and the recording console. And if we for a moment assume that the recording console and everything else that we're listening on, the devices, are transparent, obviously they have character. These headphones that I'm wearing in this podcast right now sound different than my phone when I hold it in my hand, right? But if you just view that as another variable, it's not really part of the guitar equation, that's just part of the listener's equation, then the Kemper eliminates everything between the guitar and the ear. And that's really powerful. So that last one, that moment of triumph, being able to dial in a sound live and then boom, put it on a record and have my tone, have the confirmation that my tone sitting down with a producer works in this mix because I've dialed it in live with that same band, that's hugely valuable. And an amp can't do that because an amp can't be heard by the audience. Some people just went, wait a minute, HW, an amp can be heard by the audience. No, it can't. All we do is put mics away from the audience. We put baffles around them. We put them in isolation boxes. We put them out. What they're hearing is the mic sound, and that's what the Kemper can capture. That's even why if you look at modeling, there's no microphones on the Pod 2. They say that it sounds like an amp. They don't say it sounds like this amp mic'd up with this. But as you see the stuff evolve, you realize, oh, look at line 6 now. They're putting mic models so you can match mics and cabinets because it's part of the equation. It's part of the equation. I don't know what to tell you. That was a no going back moment. HW, has an amp maker ever come after you or Tone Junkie for profiling their amps? I've alluded to this a bit, and I'd rather not get into the details. I had one amp company who I think makes some of the greatest amps out there. You can put together who it is if you know. I made a pack, and I offered to work with this gentleman, and I said, "Hey, do you want to work together?" And they politely just said, "No, I don't. I think I'm like a real tube guy, and I don't really want to get involved with the digital stuff." I think for them, maybe they thought it didn't make sense with their brand, which I respect. I get it, because this company sort of is one of the, I would say right now there's two companies out there that I'm aware of that I would say those guys are engineering new amplifier designs. They're not just, it's not a modified Vox, it's not a modified Marshall, it's not I did this, I hand wired it and I made this modification and I use mercury magnet transformers and now it's amazing. I think there's so many companies who make really great sounding amps, but at the end of the day, they're 95% a historic circuit. And I'm going to talk about this more because I got a question recently about the morality of the Kemper. And do I feel it's right or wrong that I'm not paying amp manufacturers to profile their amps? And I have a lot of thoughts on that subject, and I'd really like to share them. I think it's a great question, but I actually want to do it with Michael Britt. So when he's in there, we're going to do 1 or 2 episodes of the Tone Junkie podcast, and I think the big one's going to be the morality of profiling. But putting that aside for now, because I'd really like to talk about that in the future, I think there are 2 amp companies that are really doing stuff that's so innovative. I'm not talking about, by the way, listen, I don't mean to put everybody down. Some companies do make unique circuits, and they also make like their own amp. You know, like they do, like Sir is a good example. They do have actual stuff that's really new and really unique. But their amps do shoot for a certain type of sound, right? And this is not to put down Sir. They have both. Like Sir is actually very innovative, I feel. Their Bella amp is not a clone of a Fender amp. But their SL67 is supposed to be an amazing Marshall. That's what it's supposed to be. So I'm not faulting them for that or anything. I'm just saying there are 2 companies that to me really stand head and shoulders above the rest. And one of them politely just didn't feel it fit their brand to work with me. I did a pack that had profiles that were trying to capture some of those tones. And sorry, I gotta silence this thing. And after that, we had some conversations. They didn't like that I had removed their logo, but I was using the outline shape of the logo because it was like a badge on the front of the amp. So there was like an outline, and I replaced the outline. Now, when you do that with a Marshall badge, it's just a rectangle. So that's kind of what I've been doing, replacing the logo, just taking it away so that people didn't think this was an official product. Well, when I did it here, I took off the name so people would know it was not an official product, but I left the outline of the badge. And the outline of the badge in that instance is actually part of their logo. It's not just like a rectangle or a square. The shape of that badge was actually part of the logo. And so they asked me to change it. And so I did. And no hard feelings. I had another amp manufacturer who just sent me an email that said, "Take my amps out of your pack or I'm suing you." And that guy's notorious for just being a bully and kind of doing that stuff. Now, maybe you don't think he's a bully. In this instance, you're right. What he did to me, I don't think that qualifies as being a bully. But he's been just so outspoken and so dramatic. And I know a number of people who have sold this guy's amps, just actually sold the amps because they don't want to be associated with him. And because when it comes to warranty stuff, they're rude to customers. And that's not me making an accusation. That's why I'm not saying anyone's name. If you want to figure it out who it is for yourself, go on the boards. There's one company in particular that is generally regarded as making great amps because they do. They sound great. And in general, there's a very common theme among the amp owners that please just hope that you don't have a problem, because that guy really he's not very nice when it comes to, if you say certain things online, it like triggers them and this person and they go crazy. So whatever. Honestly, I've heard he's a very nice guy from so many people. It just appears that he feels very passionately about stuff. And I think it comes off as abrasive, very abrasive. And so it's one of those things where some people say like, I can't believe someone would behave that way. And then other people are like, that doesn't sound like him at all. He's a perfectly reasonable person and a very skilled builder. So whatever. I told that guy, I said, I'm happy to remove it, because at the end of the day, for me, it's just not worth it to have someone out there who's really upset at you and really, really like who has an emotion that could be something near hate for you or something. And I certainly don't want to be blamed for anyone's problems. Look, being a tube manufacturer is a hard business right now. I'm a ninja when it comes to like marketing, content marketing and stuff. I feel, I have told people, here's what you should do for your amp company. Did they have to take the advice? No. But sometimes I just say to people, I've gotten this, like, I did that podcast. Let me tell you this. I did that podcast a while ago. I don't want to sound arrogant here, and that's why I'm pausing here, because I'm afraid that what I'm about to say sounds arrogant. I did that podcast and called What's Killing the Tube Amp. And I want to revisit that idea because some ideas I shared in that podcast have actually been brought to market. I talked about an amp that would have an IR loader in it. And I talked about why don't cabinets come with IRs of that cabinet. I've talked about all this stuff. And some people, I don't know if they're listening or it's just, parallel discovery. That happens a lot too. Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla were both discovering and working with electricity at the same time. Why? Because all of the precursor and the tertiary work had been done beforehand to get us to where, as a species, we were about to discover we were logically going to be using electricity. That was next. We knew it. We were using electric pulsing with the Morse code. We were using it with the telegraph. So if we're using electric pulses there, it only makes sense that we could have a constant stream of electricity if we can already conduct electricity through a wire. Now we need to deal with voltage and DC, AC, volts and everything, and resistance. That's next. And then that brings power. And we know power, we had the internal combustion engine. Well, power, this is another type, but we can use this power. And the light bulb, and we can light things. Lighting is huge. And we can power things. This is revolutionary. Those guys nobody came up with that first. They didn't copy each other. They both were discovering at the same time. I'm not a genius. I'm just looking at the market saying, what do I think is coming next? And I did that in a podcast. Someone reached out to me and said, because I talked to a builder, and one builder was really receptive, and they thought there was some great ideas. And another builder kind of had the idea, it got back to me that they said something like, well, what does that guy know? He's never, he doesn't even make tube amps. He's just into digital stuff. And my reply to that person was, here's what I know. I know that guy knew who I was before you told him about me. And that's the idea. I mean, that's as a marketer, as a business, you have to market yourself. You got to put yourself out there. So all I'm saying is, how what are my qualifications to say, here's where I think the industry's going, or here's what I think amp manufacturers should do? Well, it's because I've been in the business trying to get word out to people. I've marketed to people in the past. And it's what I do in my day job. And it's what I do with Tone Junkie. Really. Really. I mean, this is like a tip for the business owners out there. I don't sell profiles. I make content and get people to watch my stuff. Profiles are just something I do on the side. If you can put that hat on, dude, you could sell anything in the world. Now, I freaking love my profiles, and there's a reason I haven't released some other products because I'm not as excited about them. I play these profiles. I'm authentically a green, bleeding dude. You know what I mean? I bleed Kemper green, man. That's the truth. But why did I go on that thing? Because I want to say this. I don't want to be the reason that an amp manufacturer thinks their business is going down, because the real reason their business is going down is that, with the exception of a handful, most amp companies and most pedal companies don't utilize social media well to get people excited about their product, to get the word out. If everyone would just watch what Brian Wampler is doing, your businesses would double. Listen, if anyone wants to talk to me about this, you can talk to me about this. I'll give you all the secrets. I will give you the book that Brian Wampler read that got him on a content strategy that has grown his business tremendously, so much so that when the second version of the book came out, when the next book came out, they used Brian Wampler as a case study to say, see, this stuff works. If any amp manufacturer was like serious, like, hey, I'm an amp manufacturer. I was successful in the 90s and the early aughts, and I'm seeing challenges in my business today. I'm free. I'm 100% free. Like, call me. I had an amp manufacturer call me. I talked with them. I'd love to work with anybody. That's the truth. To me, it's obvious. Like, you need to be telling the story. You've got to go. If you have tubes from this part of the world that use this thing and this, I would get on an airplane and I would film myself going to Romania to the tube factory and speccing out tubes. I'd film myself coming back, going to a supplier place, like hand selecting all of the diodes and stuff myself. I would release a new cabinet and I would sell it with IRs. And if you buy the cabinet, I'd give you a free digital download of my IRs. And for everybody else, I would charge a lot of money for those IRs. I'm serious. I'd make a $100 IR pack, $150 IR pack. And people would say, that's way too expensive for IRs. And I'd say this. Here's why it's so expensive for IRs, for those IRs. Because this is from the person who made the cab, who tuned the cab and the dimension of the cab. They know exactly what they want to hear. Then they expertly made the IRs, and the IRs are meant for cabinet owners. But if you want to buy it, well, we don't want to undercut our cab business because we got to stay afloat. The whole industry is hurting to sell cabs right now and guitar because everything's going small. So you have these guys. So it's like if you make Marshall stuff, well, Marshall stuff doesn't work in a 110, even though Marshall just released a 110 Plexi, which has me scratching my head. There's companies who make incredible amps, but there's people just limited by space. So sell them a cab. So you can have a cab when you go out on the road. You can have a cab for a gig, but then you can go ahead and have your IRs, the official IRs of X, Y, and Z company, and it comes with your cab. And it's IRs of that exact cab with popular microphones so that you can do it. You can use it for recording, or you could use it live. And then what could you do? You could get a torpedo box, or you could get that new Boss amp expander. You could run your IRs in there, and live you could use the big cabinet and the IRs that match your cabinet and your speaker, match your everything, and you could send that IR direct to the front of house. So the sound guy has a great, strong, direct IR to get his signal from, and you've still got the cab blaring on stage. That's a no-brainer. How has no one taken the digital version of cabinets and given them away for free because they're cheap to produce? I'm making IRs right now. I just made a bunch. I just made like 9 IRs of my favorite cabinet. I made it through an SM7B, through a Royer 121. I made it through a Fathead 2. I made it through a Sennheiser 906. I made it through an AKG 414. Then I matched them together. I did a Fathead and a 57. I did the 906 and a Fathead. I did the Royer and a 57. I did the 906 and a Royer. I did all this stuff. And you know how long it took? That took me like a day's work to do all that. And it was a day of me also like literally like watching the Royal Rumble on my other screen while I'm sitting there doing it. You know what I mean? Like while I'm setting stuff up, coming back, playing through it. How's it sound? Okay, shoot the signal. And then I turn on the Royal Rumble while it's going boop, boop, boop. Like, you know, I'm having a chill day of work. It's not like this is hard labor. You know, then I go upstairs and I make myself some lunch, you know. I was like, oh, is that a new Shark Tank that my wife's watching? Oh, yeah. I watch that for like 15 minutes while I stand there eating my lunch. Then I come back downstairs, get distracted. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you can give them away for free. I don't get why companies don't give away their IRs of their cabs for free when they try to sell you a cab. It'd be a huge reason to go buy the cab new. In that new cab, the first owner gets the IRs. And they maybe get future IRs you put out of that cab. That just seems like a clear value add. I don't get it. I don't know. It's all about the story, guys. You just tell the story. You tell the story about why your amp is amazing, and you show your blood, sweat, and tears. That's the thing. There's people crying and bleeding in this industry, and nobody knows about it, and their bank accounts are going down because they don't know how to tell the story. And I'm free. Give me a call. I will help you tell the story. That's the truth. I'll do whatever I can for you because I love great amps. Thoughts on running true stereo, 2 Kempers while playing live from Whirly Tones on Instagram. Whirly Tones, listen, bro, here's my thoughts on true stereo. You can get true stereo from a single Kemper. I mean, you get true stereo effects, but you mean, putting 2 amps left and right. It is the one thing the Kemper can't do that I wish it could do that the Helix does. And that is you can pan 1 amp to one side, 1 amp to the other. I got to do a video soon about running 2 Kempers with 1 remote because my church is building a new church, and that's where I play most weekends. And I'm going to be able to run 2 Kempers. Right now, there's not enough channels for me to run 2 Kempers. I could actually... I just have to run the XLR from the other side of the stage because it's in the other like understage box. But I just don't do it. But anyway, I could run 2 Kempers in stereo, but I probably won't do that. But I could run 2 Kempers, but right now I'm running just 1 in mono. And it sounds great, and I'm going to do a video on how you can run 2 Kempers with 1 remote by using a MIDI cable and a little feature that's hidden in the Kemper that's kind of hard to find. It's not really hard to find. It's right there in plain sight, but nobody talks about it. And I asked Kemper when they released this, and they told me, and I couldn't believe how long it's been out. And I asked them, why haven't you announced it? And they said, it's in beta. And I was like, but this is a full release I'm on. And they're like, well, the feature's in beta. And I really think that was code for, we put it in there, it's in the line notes. If nobody read it, nobody read it. That's it. But anyway, Stu G is planning on running his 2 Kempers left and right. So he's got 2 Kempers right now. And actually, why am I saying planning? He's running it right now left and right. But the stuff that we're planning to release, he's running left and right. So we made dual profiles together of his Park and his JMP, his Park and his Vox, his this and his that, blah, 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 all the stuff. But we also ended up making profiles of them amps by themselves because he's going to use them together. 1 Kemper running a JMP, 1 Kemper running the Park, 1 Kemper running the Vox, 1 Kemper running the Park. My thought is, but here's the thing about Stu. He doesn't do stereo delays. He just has both those amps running in mono. I talked to James Duke, too. He's kind of a fan of the same thing, dual amps running in mono. I don't know. I used to do dual amps running in mono. It could be. Stereo delay is awesome, but do you want stereo delay also hitting both sides so that the amp is over here, like on the left side, is different than the amp on the right? I don't know. I think sometimes you do. It's a cool sound, I think, and it can sound really big. I'm excited to experiment with it more. But my thoughts are it's largely unnecessary and isn't going to be noticed by the audience. But who cares? Gear is for us. Like if guitar players are having fun, they play better, they feel better, and if you feel better, you play better and sound better. So have fun, like do your thing. I think it's cool. I think I have experience where you have one amp in one ear, one amp in the other in your in-ears, and it does sometimes sound like two guitars. It's a very cool kind of thing. It's very 3D. But here's the thing. To do that, you really got to set your delays up if you're going to do stereo delay. If you're using two Kempers and panning this way and this way, you're going to put one delay this way, one delay this way, and you're going to, sort of do it right. It'd be tedious to program all that stuff in the Kemper, although it's actually what I'm working on right now, because I am working on that video. So it'll be cool to see. Del Piero says, editor? ? Yeah, dude. There's one. There's an editor, and I'm happy about it. And also, Del Piero, you make really good videos on Facebook, bro. So I hope you watch this or listen to this because I love your stuff on Facebook, and I got to share some of it. Thank you so much. AJ Davidson says, what donut did you get from Dinkles? Yeah, so what he's referring to, just so people are aware, is I'm working on a video right now that's going to be all about my search for a great hollow body and my love and my hate for hollow body electric guitars. Really my love and hate for a 335. And it's coming to an interesting chapter, and I think it's going to be like a recurring... I want to make this hollow body thing a series where HW looks for his favorite hollow body, and it's going to start 6 months ago. What I mean by that is the video is going to open with me going, with literally the word saying 6 months ago, because that is when the saga begins of me going to Chicago Music Exchange and me almost buying a guitar. And I left that place and I go across the street to Dinkles and I eat a donut to think about it. And Dinkles is a crazy good bakery and donut place across the street from CME. If you ever go to Chicago Music Exchange, please go across the street to Dinkles. And I sit there and I just ponder with this donut. And I got some really great footage of it that'll be in the video. But the video will be me flying out to Chicago, going to CME, and then kind of going like, well, I'm going to wait. And I don't buy the guitar. And then fast forward. So what was the donut I got? I ate like 4 donuts, man. This is pre-keto. This is pre me losing like 24 pounds or whatever I'm down now, which I still got a little ways to go. I still got to lose like another 24 pounds or something. But halfway there is good. But, at the end of the day, it's like Dinkles has amazing donuts, and I can't find a 335 that I fall in love with to save my life. So your next question, AJ Davidson, which I'm talking about you like I don't know you, man. I interact with you all the time. What made you go with the Guild over the 335? Straight up, I'm going to say this. If I can ever have a custom guitar made, they're going to measure this Guild neck because this is the single greatest neck I've ever felt. This thing feels, this may be one of the best playing vintage guitars I've ever run across. It's original, all original 1964. The only thing that's been replaced is the nut. Who was it? It was not Carter's, not Gruen's. It was Gruen's that put a new nut on there. And the old nut is like thrown in the case. But it plays tremendous. And the Guild Speed works amazing. What made me go with that? I literally ordered that guitar on a whim on Reverb when I realized how cheap vintage Guild stuff was. So I ordered it. And the only complaint I have about that guitar is that in 1967, Guild made a switch in how they were constructing their guitars. They made 2 switches. In 67, and then I think in 69, 70, or 71. I can't tell. It looks like they might have made a change gradually, or they were making 2 features congruently. But there are 2 changes. In 1967, they modified the Guild Starfire. They basically shifted the neck on where it sat on the body, so it was more like a 335. because in the late 60s, it became apparent that people wanted to play higher up the neck, even for jazz. And so what they did was traditionally, like on an ES330 or an Epiphone Casino, the body meets the neck at the 15th fret, where a 335, the body meets the neck at the 18th fret. That extra, now well, here's what that means. That's where the body meets the neck, and then the body slowly scoops out. So you can reach higher than the 15th fret, but you start feeling the body in your palm when you do it. By pushing it down to the 18th fret, you're feeling the body contour out when you get up that high on the 18th, 19th, 20th. But you can easily play fret 20, 21, and 22, and it just feels a little different in your hand. It's not the most comfortable, but it's accessible. When you meet the body at the 15th fret, like these older guilds do, it becomes very difficult to play. Truthfully, I am really liking the sound of this guitar right now, and I wanted to play it live for the Church House CD release show, or the CD release services. And I didn't. I made the decision not to because I couldn't reach all the way up comfortably enough that I was honestly afraid I was going to make some mistakes, because while I was practicing, it was difficult to reach up. There's one song in particular that I'm playing in B major on sort of that second Dorian mode position there, that second position. It's kind of a pentatonic lick. So playing in that second position of the pentatonic scale, I'm up there and I can't reach it. Like, you can't reach it really, and I can't like do a high. It's tough to play that guitar really high like that. I can do it for most songs. Most songs I don't need to live up there so much, but for one song in particular, and it's the title track on the record, I couldn't do it sort of reliably or comfortably. So I got the Sirs back out. And I love that guitar. The Suze is in love with that guitar. The other change Guild made later is they changed the pickups. The pickups I have, mine's a 1964. The pickups I have are like, they look like mini humbuckers, but they're called HB1s. And they're actually called HB1s anti-hum pickups. And it's interesting, they're called anti-hum pickups. I guess they thought at the time humbucker might not take off, and they would call them anti-hum, or they were just wanted something that, instead of a buck the hum, anti-hum. I don't know. It's possible that humbuckers are called humbuckers because who would say the term buck the hum? Oh, these buck the hum. That doesn't make any sense. Maybe that was a thing at the time, but maybe Gretsch had the patent on anti-hum originally, and yet they call them the HB1s, so I don't know what that means. But later they went to a full-size version of the HB1s. That happened maybe in 70. But in 67 is when you see the switch. So I'm probably going to buy another one of these Guilds, and I'm really looking forward to it. But I went with the Guild over the 335 because I haven't found a 335 I've been able to fall in love with yet. But soon enough, I'm sure I will find one. That's all the questions on Insta right now that I'm going to cover for the day. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening to the Tone Junkie podcast. To wrap up, Acoustasonic, not that great. My thoughts on Kemper and the new stuff, and we're gonna have Michael Britt on here, and I'm really excited to do a morality of the Kemper episode. I really want to delve into this with Michael and get into, because I have a lot of thoughts on the morality of the Kemper, what I think is right and what I think is wrong, and all sorts of stuff that I want to talk about there, and the industry and where we're at, and how I think people like Kemper profilers sometimes take some undue blame, because I know the numbers on what people are selling, and I know the numbers on like how many Kempers are out there. And if you're telling me we're tanking an industry, I'm gonna call your BS. That's the truth. I'm gonna call your BS, and I'm gonna make the case. I'm not gonna make this case in my morality thing because it has nothing to do with the morality. But I will say just the effects of modeling, profiling on the industry. Modeling is having a far more significant impression. And here's really the new things. The Kemper and modeling technology and stuff, here's what I notice. The Kemper is converting some people away from amps, but I know very few people who do this professionally who don't still own a lot of amps. But I know a lot of people who never really owned a lot of amps, and they own a Helix. They had one amp, and they're young. They're in their 20s, or they just had whatever amp. They bought a Guitar Center, and they've just had an amp for like 5, 6, 7 years. Maybe they've had 2 amps in their life, and they've gone to Helix. So the idea that people are not buying, they aren't boutique players to begin with, is really what I see from a lot of Helix guys. That's not true of everybody, but what I'm saying is, especially in the worship circles, I see a lot of guys who were playing AC-15s, Hot Rod Deluxes, mass-produced, cheap, imported amps that are industry standards. They're ubiquitous. We see them everywhere. So are they affecting Matchless? I really don't think so. Especially I have customers who have bought the amps from me after I profile it. They buy the pack and they go, I have to have that amp. And I get that, because amp in the room tone is a real thing. And I want to talk about the new stuff Kemper put out with the Kemper Cone amp in the room stuff on the next Tone Junkie podcast. We got Stu G coming up real soon. He's actually coming over tomorrow. Got Michael Brick coming over the next day. We got a whole bunch of stuff coming up. And I'm going to keep doing these HW episodes. And you guys, thank you so much. The response to the Michael Britt episode and to the video version of the podcast has just been tremendous. The support I've been receiving online. I just was at the UPS store and this guy stopped me. He's like, "Are you HW?" And I was like, "What? What? Yes." I mean, it's one thing to be like at a Kemper event and people be like, "HW," because that's your people. But to just be in public is insane. And I'm so lucky, by the way. I wonder if that guy listens, but I held the door for him. And I thought to myself, I always hold the door for people because I moved to the South and I notice people are extremely polite in the South. So I hold the door for everybody. Sometimes when it's awkward, sometimes people are too far away and I'm still holding the door. And it's like, then they feel like they got to rush. And then it's a whole, everybody, you're just like overdoing the politeness. But I held the door for this guy. He was like, "Thanks, man." I just smiled and I was like, "Yeah." It's like, we were both on the way out of a UPS store. And he was like, "Are you HW?" And I was like, holy cow. The power of the internet, man. The power of the internet. Anyway, I'm HW. Thank you so much for listening. HW, out.